The next thing I want to do is I'm going to go into the Etsy folder and I want to edit my resolve.conf file. Alright, so resolve.conf. And notice that this is what Network Manager added, my gateway, but I don't want that. What I want to do instead is add the IP address of my DNS server, so Pegasus. It's going to use itself, and then there's one more thing I want to do to specify who's authoritative for resolving host names in this zone. And I'm going to add search, and it's going to be ultimate and battlestars.com, and add a period after that, or a suffix. And this is equivalent to adding what's called a DNS suffix. As a matter of fact, in Microsoft, if you look in Windows 7 or Vista or XP, there's a DNS suffix option, and that's what we'll have to add again to our Windows client to get it to use bind DNS server properly. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Yes, and hit enter. And with these config files complete now, I just need to do a few more things. So of course, whenever we modify any configuration files, we always need to restart something. So our daemon here, the bind9 daemon. So Etsy, remember all those symlinks and a netd. And I'm going to want to go to bind9 and pass in the command line option to restart it. Okay, and it looks like everything went okay as far as bind restarting. Now there's a couple of tools I can use, but I want to probe or test this. I may have a syntax error somewhere. There could be a bug. Could be something going on in my DNS configuration. So I'm going to try NS lookup. And by the way, the same tools in Microsoft in Active Directory. NS lookup, and I want to do, let me try Pegasus, okay? And notice that I'm able to resolve, in other words, this DNS server, this bind server is authoritative for ultimate.battlestars.com, and it's mapped to the right IP. There's Pegasus, 192.168.13.100. And I want to do NS lookup, and I'm going to test Galactica. And again, notice it's authoritative for Galactica, and whereas Pegasus was 100, Galactica is 110. And I can't really ping it yet because I have to go configure the clients now. I haven't set them up yet. We just set up the server. But I can test it with NS lookup. And then later I would ping it by host name and try to do resolution that way. So NS lookup, and let me try this for Germany XP. Okay? And then there's Germany XP, 192.168.13.115. So at this point, my DNS server is working properly, and I've taken all the steps I need to now I can go set up my clients and get them to use my DNS server. The only other thing I want to do is test my forwarders. So something outside my domain. Let's say I want to ping www.yahoo.com. Yahoo! Okay, now this will verify that my forwarders are working, those IPs, and so I can go out my excessive number of forwarding IPs that I added, of course, because it's how we roll. But in this case, that way I know too that forwarding is working on my DNS server setup. And again, we'll go try to ping Google. Took a few seconds there, but there's Google coming up too. So forwarding's working. I know my DNS server is working. That was the hard part, or at least that was the more involved part. Setting up the clients is easy, and we'll do that next. Now we're on the Galactica, and we want to configure the Galactica to be a client of the Pegasus, our bind9 DNS server. So we kind of zoom in here again so you can see what I'm typing, hopefully. And again, remember by default on any installation of Ubuntu, DHCP is going to kind of be the default setup. If you just click next and go with the default, so 192.168.13.15, that's fine for DHCP. And actually, later when we set up a DHCP server, that'll still be okay. But for now, I'm going to configure this as a static address in this particular situation, just to get it to, to kind of demonstrate it using the bind9 DNS server. And the problem with leaving it on DHCP for now is it's set up. If I cat etc resolve.conf, notice it's set up to use the name server here, 192.168.1.1, that's the dynamic DNS on the router. That's not the DNS that exists on our bind 9 server Pegasus. So if I were to try to, in other words, if I were to try to resolve a host name, ping Pegasus. Now it found somebody out there on the internet, 208.68.143.55 named Pegasus. But that's not our Pegasus. Our Pegasus is 192.168.13.100. So again, it's not the right DNS server. And I could try configuring that. Let's see, sudo nano etc.resolve.conf. But if I do this and I change this, remember that as soon as I reboot, since Network Manager is installed, Network Manager will kind of override that and put its own settings back in there dynamically. So I'm going to have to uninstall Network Manager at this point until I have an Ubuntu DHCP server set up, configured with our own settings. But again, I want to specify search ultimate battle stars, and I'm going to do .com and postfix that with a period. Control X, Y, enter to save, and I'm going to clear this up here. And now notice it finds Pegasus ultimatebattlestars.com, the right IP address, because the Pegasus bind 9 DNS server is authoritative for the domain or the zone ultimatebattlestars.com. So 192.168.13.100. Now we're getting some replies back here, albeit slow replies over the wireless connection. We're on a Windows XP Professional client now, and again, if I do ipconfig, which is Microsoft's version of ifconfig all, notice my settings here. In this case, my host name is Germany XP. IP address 192.168.13.16. This I got from the DHCP server on the router, and then here's my DNS server setting. Again, it's the gateway or the router address. Again, my host name, Germany XP. With these settings, were I to try to ping Galactica, it doesn't know a DNS server that's authoritative. It doesn't even really know about ultimatebattlestars.com yet. So can't ping Galactica, and I can't really ping Pegasus. I do either one of those. So what I'm going to do is, again, to match the configuration settings that we set up on our bind DNS server, I'm going to go here in properties, and I'm going to go to TCP IP, and I'm going to specify 199.207.13 and 115 was the address we specified. The default subnet mask, and 199.207.13.1 was the gateway, and 199.207.13.100 was the DNS server that we set up. And then the only other thing I want to do is I want to click on the Advanced tab, go to DNS, and I need to add the DNS suffix. Remember in the resolve.conf file on Linux Ubuntu where we said we added the line search space ultimatebattlestars.com period? Well, this is Windows version of that, the DNS suffix, and so I need to say ultimatebattlestars.com. Alright? So same thing that I put in the resolve.conf file in Windows 7 or Windows XP or Vista, I would put it here. And notice the hourglass there. Windows XP is doing the same thing that Linux Ubuntu does. It has to restart some of its networking services whenever there's a configuration change, such as what we just did. So now with these new changes, if I hit the up arrow, just like in Linux, I can do ipconfig all. Notice it reflects my new changes. Now my new DNS server is 192.168.13.100 or Pegasus. And my new IP is a statically configured one. DHCP is no longer affecting this machine. So if I were to test it, let's ping the Galactica. Okay, and notice I get 4 echo replies. In this case, now it knows a DNS server that's authoritative for the domain ultimatebattlestars.com, and it sees 192.168.13.110 on the ping. And let's say that I also want to ping the Pegasus. And again, I get 4 echo replies. It sees the bind 9 DNS server responsible for ultimatebattlestars.com and pings 192.168.13.100. And again, let's test a forwarder, something not in our domain, so yahoo.com. And now, again, for echo replies, notice that Linux kind of flood pings by default.